How's it going, ladies and gents? I'm Sixkilla. Welcome back to Sekimeiya. We're in chapter 4 now. Just kicking off with chapter 4. Man, this track, I haven't heard this track before, but it's not bad. It's not bad. Anyway, where were we? That's right, we just kicked off chapter 4. I think we're talking to Shin themselves? The group? I don't know. Let's carry on, shall we? Here, chapter 4 is pretty short, so I don't know. You did a good job, Artise. Behind a short chair, Artise's boss congratulated him. As he did, however, Artise knew he must have been killed there for a different reason. Thank you. I'm glad everything went well. Yes, me too. How was it? How? It was simple, of course. I had to spend a long time in the tower, but it went as we'd expected. I haven't got my glasses on again, as usual. Good. I verified that we received everything. It seems nothing went wrong. Yes, it went smoothly. Artise's boss stares into his eyes. Why? Why was he being tested like that? Is that all you have to say? Yes, am I missing something? If it's as you said, no. Is this why you called me? Yes, you can go now. Artise was confused. He'd been surprised to have been called 4 days after the mission, but his boss's attitude had left him even more phased. I'll go then. His boss didn't show the slightest sign of movement. After a long pause, Artise stood up. Suddenly, 5 knocks reverberated through the small space. Go ahead. The door opened and the outline of a thin man appeared. Hesitantly, he looked into the room, worried he was a disturbance. What do you want, Ito? There's something I have to tell you. Speak then. I have been told Ashiya will pick up a notable gem this Wednesday. Who told you that? Katai Kuichi from security. He compared it to the situation with the Gnome Dyad. He said that they'll show it on the 15th. The event is going to be changed. What else did he say? That they're working very hard to catch us before that day, handling the situation with utmost care, and having a lot of trouble with it. The gemstone was found yesterday on Ayaran, and it was called the Sekimeiya. Anything else? No. Why were you told this? I don't know. I think he was venting, honestly. I've worked there since years before the first attack, so I believe I'm considered trustworthy. We had a brief conversation this morning. I see. Thank you for letting us know immediately. Do so again in the future. You may go now. Yes. After Ito left the room, Artise's boss looked pensive for some time before inquiring what Artise's thoughts were. Artise had been the most involved in Ashiya-related matters. As such, his superior was curious to know his thoughts on what they'd heard. They must expect an attack is imminent, so I'm sure they have something prepared. Of course. 3 days ago, our access to the tower's computer was terminated. It's unlikely we were detected though, so they're repeating the same preemptive actions. Infecting the computer again is not a priority. They must be paying close attention to it. And if they found out a way to identify us, we can't risk notifying them of the moment we regain access. I have a thought. The computer was clean, so they're evidently preparing something in the tower. However, we have very early information about the event they're preparing. If we want to make a move, it might be a good call to do it before they actually retrieve the gem on the 30th. What? That would be disastrous. Did you not listen to Ito? He was told they're handling the situation extremely carefully, and he was told about a few key details. Ashiya are hungry for a spy. If we take advantage of the information Ito was given, we're handing them his identity. You're right, that's a bad idea. You can leave now. I'll think about this. Yeah. Artise gave his boss a slow nod and walked out of the room. Why were you told this? I don't know, I think he was venting, honestly. I've worked there since years before the first attack, so I believe I'm considered trustworthy. We had a brief conversation this morning. I see. Thank you for letting us know immediately, and do so again in the future. You may go now. Yes. Katai's heart rapidly pounded his chest. He landed his first hit. Ito was part of Shin, and Ashiya's bait had sunk into their pond. Shaking, Katai combed through the rest of the recording, but it didn't contain anything else of relevance. The door to the security room opened. We've made the primary announcement of the Sekimeiya. We won't have it until tomorrow, but there's no way Ashiya will come up with Gan. That's good. We have to build it up as early as possible, and we always announce the events well in advance. Ito had called Artise again. When he stepped into the room, he was gestured to sit in front of the table. Have you heard about it? Ashiya's announcement. Yes, they've revealed the existence of the Sekimeiya, and the details match what Ito was told. I think your idea is now worth considering. Right, now that the information is out, we won't be linked to Ito. They'll think that we'll attack the tower as usual, as you said. They cleaned up their computer, so what they're preparing has to entail the building. We know Ashiya will obtain the Sekimeiya tomorrow, but we could have investigated for this information after the announcement. And we still need to do that. We don't know where the Sekimeiya currently is or what it looks like. No, we know enough. Ashiya said that they'll pick it up tomorrow, as opposed to having it brought. We know that means the source is established, and from Yushibana. It was found on the 27th, so that Ashiya will already have it tomorrow, confirms it's currently here. There are a few established points in contact with Ashiya, but not many. There are a couple of amateur collectors that try to sell their findings to them. If it was found on the 27th and Ashiya already knew that they would obtain it yesterday, it's likely they were immediately called about it, in hopes that they'd buy it. The 27th is a Sunday, the day Gan closes his shop to go to the caves. It's highly possible it was him who found it. It was also given a name before Ashiya obtained it, which is something he has done in the past. I understand. We don't know how it looks though. Should Ito try to obtain that information? I don't think so. Jiro took his cell phone out of the drawer. Let's try this. With a serious expression, Jiro dialed a number and put his cell phone close to his ear. Yes? Am I calling Musashi Gemstones? You are? I'm glad to speak with you. I'm Zane from Ashiya. I'm calling you to confirm that I'll come tomorrow at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock? I was told it would be 9 o'clock. Oh, really? My mistake. I was looking at the wrong page. You're right. It'll be at 9 o'clock. Is that alright? Yes, I'll be here. Perfect. That was all then. I'll see you. Goodbye. It appears you have a new job tomorrow. The plan was simple. Artise had to pass himself off as an Ashiya member. In order to not be easily recognizable in the future, his figure had to be slightly disguised, and he knew how to change his voice. On November 30th, snow began to fall. Shin had been preparing their move, and Ashiya did the same. Minutes before 9 o'clock, a car parked outside Musashi Gemstones. Artise emerged from inside it wearing a long coat. Stepping into the snow, he approached the bright window, leaving the prints of a new pair of shoes behind. He wasn't even close to calm. If Gan had told Ashiya about the call he'd received, they might have been waiting for Shin's arrival. Slowly, he pushed open the door, a wave of warm air hitting his guarded face. Inside the shop, he saw a young man near the entrance who only glanced at him emptily. Avoiding eye contact, Artise stared behind his shoulders. Gan rushed over to the door after hearing the sound. Hello, I'm sorry for having come earlier than arranged. No, don't worry, I'm happy to see you. Gan's face shaped into a big smile, then he brought Artise to the reception desk. I'd like to see the Sekimeiya. Yes, I've prepared everything, wait here. Gan walked away and shortly came back. He held a small brown box between his hands and handed it over to Artise. During the time it couldn't be in cold, he'd made sure the Sekimeiya's temperature wouldn't go through the box. I'm not done, give me a moment. Oh, and you're aware of what I discussed with Lei, right? The price will be double the usual. Surprisingly, Gan walked away again. As he did, Artise peeked into the box and saw an egg-shaped stone glowing faintly. That must have been the Sekimeiya. That was his time. He had it. As he discussed with his boss, Gan had to be paid before leaving, so Artise couldn't simply step out of the shop. If he ran away, Gan could try to chase him and would immediately call Ashiya and the police. And it was possible he'd see their car. Artise slowly took something out of his large pocket. A grenade that would rapidly disperse smoke through the shop, knocking out everyone who inhaled it. Oh, it's the same smoke at the start of the thing. That black smoke that messed up the cameras. As soon as he activated it, he dashed to the door, colliding with the light, faint falling snow. The curtain blocked the view through the window so no one could see what had happened from the outside. Without slowing down, Artise ran to the car. He'd seen the immense cloud of smoke appearing before his eyes, and Gan had been further into the room. There was no way he'd avoided being knocked unconscious. Phaeton, another member of Shin, had opened the car door. Artise rapidly stepped in and hurried to close it. It's a nice car. Yo, I'm pretty sure he was hit, but Ashiya could come at any time. Phaeton accelerated as fast as he could. The vehicle took off at a speed far beyond the legal limit, almost running over an old man past the first turn. It is a nice car though. At the appointed time, Lei gripped the door handle of the door, ahead of a notary from Ashiya. When she laid eyes inside the shop, a thin darkness hindered her sight. Confused, she placed a finger on the light switch next to the door, but that turned off all the remaining light. Immediately, she flipped it back. Both she and the notary were taken aback by the loud noise. Astonished, they looked through the door and saw that the opposite part of the shop had disappeared. Their hearts almost stopped when they saw blood and human flesh on the edges of the hole. It had been Shin. As Lei stared at the scene, she found no other option. They'd never taken their attacks to such an extent before, but she knew they were responsible. How had they learned about the time and place of the Sekimeiya's trade-off? Had her phone been hijacked? On the floor were Gan and a boy she didn't know. However, someone else had been further ahead. Someone had just died and she couldn't fathom it. Are you two okay? The man beside Lei began to shake both bodies. Soon, Gan, who had inhaled a lesser amount of the smoke thanks to the shells, opened his eyes, obstructing the blood from flowing down. In disbelief, he told Lei about what had happened, stuttering as he stared at the broken floor. While an ambulance was being called, Lei's phone was also by her ear, linked to the police. I'm telling you, they just escaped. They're in a vehicle. I see their tire marks outside the shop. They must be found immediately. They stole an incredibly valuable gemstone. When the boy woke up, he stood in a daze, then staggered forward. He stared at the back of the shop with desperate eyes. Where are the two girls that were here? There was silence. Nobody knew the answer, but they didn't think they could have spoken it even if they had. I'm enjoying the Chapter 4 soundtrack. It went well. We're on the way. Phaeton and Artise were driving away. Just in case, they couldn't go straight to their boss. The dim streets of Yushibana were empty, but the snow prevented them from going as fast as they wanted to. They had to be careful to not let the wheel marks show their destination. When he'd calmed down, Artise lifted the box's lid. He saw one of the Sekimeiyas. It had to be what Ashiya had announced, as Artise had never seen a gemstone like it. Out of the blue, they heard a siren behind them. Through the rearview mirror, they could see a police car approaching. What? Stop! Don't keep going! Pale, Phaeton pulled over to the right. He couldn't muster a word. He slowly looked at the box on Artise's lap. Had Ashiya set a trap for them? Don't tell me there's a tracker in that box. Well, no, I didn't see anything. A police officer knocked on the door, demanding they open it. What's the problem? We were notified your vehicle almost ran over someone at Morta. 2 people saw you going at a much faster speed than the limit allowed. Oh, was that so? Sorry. I don't remember how fast I was going. The officer paused as he smelled the air. Inside the vehicle, both men frowned. What was he doing? The smell of the Sekimeiya. Hand me your license, please. Phaeton took out a few documents from the glove compartment and handed them to the officer. Step out of the vehicle. Sure. Does it smell like drugs, does it? This is a screening device. Please take a breath test. After a minute, the officer looked at the result. It said 0. There are no traces of alcohol on you. Of course, I would never drink before driving. You can get back in the vehicle. Please make sure you don't drive over the speed limit. Yes, I'm sorry if I went over it. I promise that I didn't notice. Phaeton stepped into the car. As he did so, the officer received a radio call. Trying to hide his haste, Phaeton asked if he could get going. With his hand, the officer indicated to hold off. Suddenly, the officer's look changed. Both men noticed he was staring at the brown box. Then the officer saw something else. On Artise's attire, there was an Ashiya logo. What's in that box? In this one, a present for my girl. Give it to me. Should I? It's snowing, and I wouldn't like it to get dirty. Please give me that box. Slowly, Phaeton took it out and handed it over to the officer. He lifted the lid, and his eyes didn't waver. Both of you step out of the vehicle. Phaeton and Artise looked at each other. Then after a pause, Phaeton extricated his lower body from below the dashboard. The officer never expected the car to accelerate, as he did. It was Artise's foot that pressed down the accelerator. Immediately, the officer ran to his car and yelled for them to stop. Later into the night, a handful of men were in Musashi Gemstones. Everyone had been ordered to leave, and the scene had been preserved as well as possible. Atsuki, Hakatoki, and Gan had been sent to the hospital. Their physical condition was fine, but they had to spend the night there. Under the shop was a channel sheltered from the icy air. There had been 2 more people inside at the time of the explosion. One of them had fallen through the floor, whereas the other had died on the spot. Shiroya Mirana had hit her head after falling from high up and entered a coma. As soon as the paramedics had reached that place, she'd been taken to the hospital too. A few people were scattered about when her body had fallen. The forensic team, they were investigating the scene, and had confirmed that the missing girl, Midomo, had died. Moidomo, sorry. Something else had fallen with the rubble, an open box, identical to the one Artis had received. Its lid had burst open, on impact, and its contents had rolled away. A handful of people had seen this shining egg-shaped stone within the darkness, but nobody had been allowed to touch anything. Its faint shine highlighted the drop of blood that had arced across its surface. So they stole one of the Sekimeiyas and the other one fell down the hole. Interesting. So I'm assuming it's the future one that fell down the hole? Or was that the past one? I don't even know. When a woman from the forensic team felt the gem for the first time, she was taken aback. Literally, aback in time. It was very odd. She had quickly learned that one of the Sekimeiya had been taken and asked the investigation team to return the fallen one. However, as it was related to the incident, it had to be inspected by them first. The woman grabbed the box and shut it inside, then, gripping a flashlight with her tight latex gloves, she kept searching around the place. When midnight hit, it was December. Katai's night shift had begun. Before entering the security room, he'd spoken to Lei. Shin had attacked the gem shop. However, for the first time, their plan had failed due to external factors. The Sekimeiya would be returned to Ashiya. How had Shin learned about the location? Katai didn't know, but it didn't matter. The preparations for his plan had been completed, so he needed Shin to attack again. It wasn't in Ashiya's interest to pursue the attack of the 30th any further. As if nothing had happened, the Sekimeiya plan needed to be continued as devised. When the stillness had gone on for a while, Katai listened to the latest recording. Nothing related to Shin was there. Since Ito had told them about the Sekimeiya, the recordings had been nothing but uneventful. The SD card behind the device had been swapped out. If the device was ever found in the tower, Katai didn't want the information he had to be revealed. He needed it for himself. It was a small card that wouldn't be questioned, so he could easily leave the building with it. After listening to Shin's brief meeting, he had saved the recording on his own computer, inserting a new empty card in the recording device. At home, Lei hadn't calmed down yet. A young girl had died at Musashi Gemstones, and she learned the initial details. Shin had impersonated Ashiya, and yet again, they possessed confidential information to carry out their plan. However, they hadn't known about the two Sekimeiya. After being given one, they had released a potent gas in the small shop, which had put everyone to sleep. The girl's death hadn't been part of Shin's plan. It had been the result of a common domestic accident, but Shin had made it possible. The Sekimeiya Shin had stolen was being brought back to Ashiya, but the other one, which had fallen through the shop's floor, had been taken by the forensics. Lei had insisted that it be returned. Garn had warned her about the temperature, but she had been told that she would have to wait 36 hours. He fucked up badly. Artis and Phaeton explained the events to his boss. They managed to slip away and safely arrived at the meeting place. Jiro was stern. He wasn't a man to grow uncontrollably angry, but his eyes showed how displeased he was. Are you convinced you won't be tracked here? Absolutely. The car is parked quite a ways away, but the police will find us soon. We have to give it up. Have you learned what happened? What do you mean? Someone died in Musashi. There was a gas explosion after you left. Both lackeys looked at each other, lost for words. It can't be, we didn't do anything. Watch the news tomorrow. You knocked everyone out so they couldn't stop the gas from being released. Then, when Ashiya entered, an explosion occurred, killing one of them. Someone else was sent to the hospital in a coma. Do you understand? This is a major fuck-up. Shin does not get involved in murder cases. It wasn't our fault though, we did as planned. You're right. All you did was draw the police to you and lose the Sekimeiya. You both should have been arrested, but now you're gonna land us all in hot water. I don't think I'll be recognized. Artis, shut up. You might be done for already. What? I'm gonna ask you the same thing I did once already. Did everything truly go as planned on the 24th? Yes, why are you asking this again? That afternoon, an unidentified person escaped from a prison cell. I was later called and told that you were seen near that place wearing the same clothes as them. Wait, what? That wasn't me? I was in the tower at the time. You say that, but we erased those records. I don't know what the fuck is going on with you, but what just happened isn't acceptable. Now you're being hunted for causing a death, and the police pulled you over. Both of you are basically done for. I have to say I couldn't believe what he was hearing. He'd been a part of Shin for many years, and he'd never been told something like that. Then what should we do? You have to be quiet, wait, and when you're arrested, you stay quiet. Come on, we won't say anything, but isn't there something you can do? Something I can do? What do you want? To go live in a different country? Why would I help you two? You allowed our first failure against Ashiya. I'm not sticking my neck out here. Anything involving you from now on will be exponentially problematic. What about the Sekimeiya? What about it? Are we going to do anything else about it? Judo didn't have an immediate answer for that question. Did you see it? I did. I was surprised by how it looked. It honestly looks like an egg made of marble, and I think it was shining a little. An egg. How big was it? A bit more than the length of this finger, I'd say. Which finger? They vary quite rapidly, quite extremely, you know? Judo was pensive for a while. His plan had been so close to working, but he couldn't blindly throw out a new move. Go home for now. Artise, I want you here tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Okay, I'll come. Both men knew not to push the issue, so they slowly stepped out of the room. Artise got home late into the night. He lived alone for years, so he had nobody to wake up. The first thing he did was look up the recent news. As he'd been told, he came across an article from the 24th of November. Someone had escaped from a prison cell, but the story was enigmatic. It hadn't been him, as he'd said. He'd been in Ashiya Tower at the time. However, he couldn't help but feel that the man in the attached picture did strangely resemble him. When the sun rose, Artiste still hadn't managed to fall asleep. The latest news was posted online, and he didn't have to search for what he wanted. The highlighted article said, 20-year-old girl dies by gas explosion in Yushibana. His eyes locked onto the headline painfully, and he was unable to clear his suddenly clogged throat. It was the first time his actions had killed someone. When he read that 2 friends of the girl had been there, a cold hollow expanded within his chest. He vividly remembered how he'd received the death of a close friend of his years ago. It hadn't been his intention, but he'd created that pain for someone else. And a friend of the girl that he'd killed was in grave danger as well. It wasn't what he wanted. Artise hated that it had happened. However, his mind kept going to what his boss had said. It was true, his situation was very volatile. He frowned as he finished reading the article. He went over it again to confirm that he hadn't been mistaken, but there was no mention of Shin or their plan. Why? There was no way Ashiya didn't think Shin was behind it. However, they hadn't been mentioned, nor had the Sekimeiya. And then they're going to keep advertising that they've got the Sekimeiya. The appointed time came. Artise had been able to get a bit of sleep, and he sat in front of his boss after a silent nod. We're going to wait for Ito to come. He'll be here soon. Alright. Ashiya hadn't stopped talking about the Sekimeiya, and it was found 2 days before its announcement. Like you said, they're doing something in that tower. I have no doubt that's why our name wasn't on the news. Yes, it's very likely. I also noticed that a surprising amount of people have echoed Ashiya. It appears that Sekimeiya's event is gaining a lot of traction. There's been a lot of interest in it. Do you remember what Ito was told? Katai Koichi's information was real, and he said they're doing their best to catch us before the 15th. They were sending the Sekimeiya to the tower, expecting our attack before the event. Right. There was a knock at the door. Enter. Ito stepped in, sensing the tense atmosphere. Then he sat beside Artise. Did you get it? Yes. I didn't think I would, but I have what you asked for. The tower's janitor put his hand in his pocket and slowly took out a rectangular piece of paper. It was a photograph. He handed it to his boss, who stared at it intensely. You were right. Looks like an egg made of marble. When he showed it to Artise, he saw the same gemstone that had been inside the box. It was shut behind glass, and the wall in the background was from inside the tower. He took a picture of it? Isn't that very risky? That's what I thought too, but it went well. Shin had figured out a way to sneak tiny devices into the tower. That was the reason they'd chosen Ito as their associate. Staff members were frequently inspected upon arrival, especially after Shin's first attacks. However, the janitor's job entailed the maintenance of the tower's plaza. By bringing the cleaning cart outside of the building and using a different Shin member to drop the desired device in it, they managed to slip a small camera into the tower. How'd you do it though? The Sekimeiya was brought to the event room, and it was inside a cabinet. I hoped it would be out of all the security cameras' sight at some point, but that wasn't the case. I wanted to use the cart to cover my hands so that I wouldn't be seen taking the picture, but it was easier than that. Entering the event room was forbidden to the public, but I stepped in to clean it. As soon as I did, Katai Koichi entered too. His night shift was about to end. It was very fortunate because a long curtain covered the Sekimeiya. He asked if I was curious about it and offered to let me see it. Is that so? What did he say this time? He seemed to want to make small talk. I believe he doesn't suspect me. He had a key for the cabinet and said they'd only made one for the event, so that Shin wouldn't be able to unlock it. He even used it to open the cabinet and let me touch the Sekimeiya. It was pretty smooth and felt like cold marble. It was kept refrigerated because it can apparently get damaged otherwise. He didn't say much else of importance, but he kept reiterating that they were hard at work upgrading the security measures to catch us. What the hell is that man doing? I don't know, but when he left, I knew nobody was going to be in the security room for a very short time. That's when I took the picture. Just in case the footage is ever reviewed, I still did it covered by the cart, so I'll only be seen uncovering the curtain again. Jiro looked very serious. He knew they couldn't take things lightly. Do you know what the upgraded security measures he talked about could be? No, he didn't elaborate, and I haven't noticed any difference. It's strange, he said the cabinet with the Sekimeiyas can be locked and unlocked with a single key. When they did that in the past, we broke them open, so they must have accounted for that. When they linked an alarm to the cabinets, we disabled it remotely thanks to our access to their computer. Given what you said, it's likely they're doing something similar, and that's why they cleaned their entire system. However, infecting it again to intercept what they're doing might be what they're waiting for. A long time ago, Shin had the chance to manually install a piece of software they created on Ashiya's computer. Thanks to the cleaning cart, they'd brought a storage device inside, and by keeping it in Ito's locker, they waited for the chance they needed. When the security staff was drawn out of the room, Ito had the chance to boot it up in their system. Despite Shin's knowledge in the field, creating an undetectable malicious program wasn't simple. Because of that, the application they placed on the computer was a harmless one that allowed it to stay hidden, only booting up for instance at a time. Its purpose was to check on a path on the cloud owned by Shin. If it contained a file, it would be downloaded and executed. However, if the file had already been downloaded once, the process wouldn't be repeated. That remote method allowed Shin to gain access to Ashiya's computer, but they knew about their security system, but a malicious file couldn't remain undetectable for long. By shuffling it every few days, however, they kept their connection to the computer for months. It entailed a risk. If the server file was found at any given time, reverse tracking Shin could have been feasible. To prevent that, they made sure their file wouldn't ever be automatically detected. But their connection to Ashiya had been cut a few days previously. What that meant was that the computer had undergone a thorough cleanup that had managed to erase Shin's file in the process. However, what about the application that had been manually installed months ago? Had it been erased too? Jiro feared the reason behind the computer's cleanup. If their original application was still present within the computer, they could infect it again by putting on a new file on the path. What Jiro didn't like was the thought that Ashiya were monitoring every change. While the file itself couldn't be detected as malicious, they might have committed a manual cleanup to assure it, or anything similar would be deleted. Then, if Shin remotely downloaded a new one, its appearance would be noticed, and although it wouldn't be detected as malicious, Ashiya could be sure that Shin had sent it. Jiro would come up with a test to know if their original application was still there. He put up a different file on the path. Upon execution, it would send a request to a web server before deleting itself. The request had been received, so Jiro knew infecting Ashiya's computer again was possible. However, he was very hesitant about doing it. The event will be on the 15th, but until then, it seems that Sekimeiya will be in the event room, merely locked inside a cabinet. Nothing we can do should involve breaking it open. It'll be there for 2 weeks. They'll definitely expect our attack, and they think it'll happen during any night. You said the cabinet looks different than all the others, right? It was prepared specifically for this, and the computer was cleaned up. I'll repeat that Katai Kuiji said their intent is to catch us before the 15th. There's one more thing that caught my attention. You were told that they'd only make 1 key for the day of the event. This means the key will be used on the 15th. Oh yes, he said he'd let me be the first to touch it, and warned me to be very gentle. First to touch it, so let visitors feel it during the event. That confirms that they'll unlock the cabinet, which we can't and shouldn't try to do. But subordinates were paying close attention and slowly understood what Jiro was getting at. If we're going to attack, there are many reasons why it should be on the very first day of the event. Now that Ashiya are putting so much effort into this, we can't follow along with their expectations. And there's another important reason why we shouldn't try to steal the Sekimeiya any day before the 15th. Since the announcement, Ashiya haven't stopped building excitement for this mysterious gemstone. They're likely being excessive on purpose. Today, the Sekimeiya's value is already greater than yesterday's. Every day, it's kept as a mystery. Ashiya are artificially inflating its value. This is why on the 15th, the Sekimeiya's value will be the highest it can be. That is when we want it. How would we obtain it though? It will always be guarded when the cabinet's open, and there's a security camera in the room. Ashiya are supposedly raising a schedule of their measures. So should we. You're right, when the cabinet is unlocked, we won't easily be able to access the Sekimeiya, but when it's locked, there's no way we will. It is possible we could acquire the single key they have, but that's not exactly likely, and it would place a lot of suspicion on Ito. That was why I'm willing to prioritize my first idea. I asked you to bring a picture of the Sekimeiya because I found Artise's description of it interesting. It was supposedly found on Iodine, that derelict mountain. I find that very hard to believe. Where would such a thing be? There are no caves there, and like Ashiya is saying, this is far from a typical gemstone. Doesn't it look too good to you? Its shape isn't natural. If it's supposed to be a stone formed over the years, there's something about the story that's off. It was found right after our latest attack, and right as the computer was cleaned up. What I believe is that the emergence of this gemstone is directly related to us. Both of you compared it to marble, and it glows faintly, adding to its shape, vague origin, and the lack of details Ashiya are providing. I can't help but feel this is deliberately organised, as if the Sekimeiya was handcrafted to draw us to the focus of their upgraded security. Do you mean that they made the Sekimeiya? That is irrelevant, however if they did, it would have been simple. They crafted a material of a single colour into a simple shape. And there are some that glow like this, and luminous paint would achieve the same effect. It doesn't matter if the gemstone in this picture was fabricated, Ashiya are giving it real value. However, what I said could be of immense use to us. Edo, it felt like marble, right? We can have its dimensions and the colour. And form aren't an issue. Do you know what? That moulding marble is fairly simple. What are you saying? That we could replicate the Sekimeiya? We easily could. I see. So we could steal it as the real Sekimeiya? Of course not. That would eliminate all our credibility. We could sell it as the real Sekimeiya. No. I said this is a solution to Ido's question. How to obtain the real Sekimeiya. We do an Indiana Jones. Swapsies. On the 15th, we take it to the building. While the cabinet's locked, it'll be noticed immediately. The real problem is taking it out of the building. And if instead we replace it with ours, Ido could take it out with the cleaning kit. Do you really think we could swap them? How would that not be noticed? Also, doesn't this create the same problem? If we manage to replace it with a similar looking stone, how would we demonstrate we have the real one? And if we sold it, Ashiya would claim to still have it. We could easily demonstrate it, and it's not only only to assert our credibility, but also to let Ashiya know their measures have failed again. And that's more of the point, really, isn't it? You don't really care about anything except sticking it to them. Which honestly I can get behind them. I know who could do this for us. My good friend, Kevin Neniko. I have an idea of how to account for this, but I'll need to think more about it. Your other question, how to swap wouldn't be noticed. That's an easier answer. We'd have to do it when the cabinet's open. However, we can't be seen either in person or from the security room. There is a way. The same thing we used last time. A smoke grenade. Do you want to release it in that tower? The event will consist of guided visits for 3 people at once, and it'll start at 9 o'clock. Like always, at that time, the floor will be almost empty. This is when we have to make our move. Before anyone knows what the Sekimeiya is, we know the people who show up earliest get in earliest. Artise, you will be there first. I knew it! It's Akuro. Fazed by his boss's words, Artise stared hesitantly. He hadn't heard the entire plan yet, but it already sounded dangerous. Ido will be there too. Once you're inside, he'll secretly give you a small grenade that he'll bring in the previous day with the cleaning kit. When the event begins, it'll go off in front of the Sekimeiya and knock everyone out. The smoke will rapidly rise up, so to avoid inhaling any, you'll immediately throw yourself to the floor. The cabinet will be unlocked, which will give you the chance to swap the Sekimeiya. Ours will be in the cleaning cart, and so that you don't have to go back to the lobby, Ido will leave it in the cleaning room. After that, you'll keep acting as if you fell unconscious. Ashiya will think they still have the Sekimeiya, so the following day, Ido will be able to take the real one out. Wait a second, why do I have to do this? Shouldn't Ido be the one? This could go horribly wrong. No, at the time of the event, Ido has no reason to be in the event room. Furthermore, it's likely the people present will be investigated, which could lead Ashiya to find the real Sekimeiya in the cart before we can obtain it. This could go wrong, you're right, but it can work. However, see it as a chance I'm giving you. You screwed up badly. Not only should you redeem yourself for us, but to yourself. If you're found, you'll be seen as a killer. Make sure this plan works before you think of asking for our help again. Will you offer help if this goes well? That's something you'll have to ask after the 15th. Until then, you're still nothing but trouble for us. Disposing of you is what we should do. You understand why it's essential that this is not a failure? I don't even get what you said though. I'll still be recorded if I do this. No, the smoke screen will cover you. We'll make sure it works as a barrier for the camera. But what about the hallway? I'll be seen going into the cleaning room. That is one reason why smoke should also be released there. Like in every guided visit, everyone will be in the lobby. If smoke appears in both hallways, everyone will quickly evacuate, as they'll be worried about it being poisonous or there being a fire. Then the exit will be guarded to make sure nobody runs out with stolen gems. Katai Kuiji will be in the security room, so due to the smoke, he won't be able to leave it without falling unconscious, and he won't see what's happening in the building. This is what you'll do. When everyone is knocked out, you go to the cleaning room, obtain our Sekimeiya. It is essential that you do this first and make sure no one sees you. You will leave your smoke grenades in the cart and subsequently go back to swap the gemstones. Who will set off the smoke outside the event room though? Nobody will. Setting up a timer is the easiest thing in the world. We know when they have to go off, at 9:04. No we don't, the event will begin at 9, but we don't know when the cabinet will be unlocked. That doesn't matter. Ito has seen the key and knows how to use it. If the smoke goes off before the cabinet's unlocked, the guide will be knocked out and they'll use the key on their person. And where exactly will the smoke bombs be in the hallways? Don't you remember? We can use the handrails. Behind them, the small grenades will be hidden. And it works great for us. The cameras in the hallways are placed to focus on the doors, so there are parts of the handrails that aren't visible. When Ito is cleaning, he can secretly place a grenade and slide it toward the point of the handrail that's being recorded. We will need 2 per hallway, and it'll seem like anyone could have placed them the previous day. Finally, both subordinates understood how serious their boss was and broke into a sweat. As they took off and draped their heavy attire on the back of their chairs, they began to process each step of what they would be performing. And that's not all. There's something else that we'll do that will divert suspicion from Ito. After all, if this works, we still wouldn't be in the clear. After suffering such a major attack, will Ashiya really believe nothing was stolen? If they're careful, they might not believe it and end up finding the real Sekimeiya. So we'll give them a reason to believe it. Their focus will be on the Sekimeiya. That's what they'll expect to be targeted, and the measures they're taking clearly involve it, as proven by the new cabinet, and it only having 1 key. That means that targeting a different room will be much less problematic. In the morning, before the event, the cameras will be monitored. However, there are more cameras than monitors, and only the hallways and a few crystal rooms are displayed at once, correct Ito? Yes, I've never seen the smaller one in the hallway, A, being displayed. It's normally just the hallway. Exactly. That means that if you put all the gems there into a case, you won't be seen. We would never usually do this, as it makes you the only suspect, but this isn't an issue at this time. The curtains aren't raised until 9:10, so you'll leave all of them down. You'll also leave the case in the room, in the corner beneath the camera, so that you can have a visitor be there when the smoke is released, crouching right as it happens. If they keep their head near the floor as they exit the tower with the case, they won't fall unconscious. 2 minutes after the smoke has been released, he'll attempt to flee. This will make Ashiya think their expectations were subverted, and that the failed attack had the room as its final target. I doubt Phaeton will be willing to take this job under any circumstance, but I'll find the right person without telling them the full extent of the plan. Since the reason behind doing this is passing off that room as the target, the smoke will need to be released there as well. So that's where Ito will leave the last grenade. But what? I'm very confused. All of this will be recorded. Yes. Before I said that infecting the computer again could be risky. While that is true, it won't be an issue if we take the proper measures. When the smoke is released, I will infect the computer remotely. While Katai is overwhelmed by the attack, it'll take me a few seconds to erase the saved footage of the previous 24 hours. Then, I'll immediately disconnect our access so that we can't be tracked. This will work in 4 different ways. It'll remove the footage that incriminates Ito. It'll remove the footage showing the source of the smoke in the event room. It'll make them think that they had to remove the hallway's footage to hide who placed the grenades there, and that's actually not needed. And lastly, it'll hide that we can access the computer at any time, because they might think we were able to erase the footage thanks to the commotion of the attack. This is it. This is what we'll do, and how we'll nab the Sekimeiya. Once the plan is a success, we'll get it out of the building with the cart. However, how do we let Ashiya know that the Sekimeiya is fake? Whatever the best answer is, it relies on the crafting process. You said that the Sekimeiya is kept pretty cold. There aren't many chemical reactions that occur at low temperatures, but perhaps we could make use of one to damage the Sekimeiya after a couple of days of exposure. If not, then a mere timed reaction would suffice. One that would break our Sekimeiya, leaving behind a card with our name. We found that, didn't we? That other time. Alright, we need to wrap this one up because we're out of time for this episode, but that was interesting. We're learning about what caused it, what happened. It all makes sense. Obviously, Arcado has got to be Artise, right? They're the same person? Am I right in that? I guess we'll see in the next episode, probably. Till then, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.